I was shelling peas when I first noticed the silence. Not the comfortable kind. I've had a lifetime of those, the quiet that settles after a good laugh, or the hush in a house when everyone is full after Sunday lunch. This silence was different. It had a weight to it, like something unsaid hanging in the middle of my living room, waiting to drop. The afternoon light was coming in low through the window, catching the dust in the air. My hands moved almost on their own, splitting the pods, letting the peas tumble into the bowl with soft little taps. I've done that since I was 15, in 3 different kitchens, in 3 different lives, but always with the same motion: crack, thumb, slide. It's funny how your hands remember even when your mind sometimes doesn't. On the coffee table in front of me lay a magazine my son had brought last week, Senior Living Today or some other cheery nonsense. With a smiling gray-haired couple on the cover, walking hand in hand into a sunset that looked suspiciously like a stock photo. I'd put an old electricity bill on top of it, as if hiding it halfway would somehow make it less real. In the hallway I could hear Mark's footsteps, my son, pacing. Mark never used to pace. When he was little, he tore through the house like a storm, yes, but these days he moved in straight lines, door to kitchen, kitchen to living room to door again. Efficient, focused. Pacing meant something was bothering him. He thought I didn't notice these things. At 68, people assume you stop noticing. I scratched my wrist with my thumb, feeling the loose, thinning skin there. The peas clicked against porcelain. In the kitchen, the kettle started its low grumble. In the hallway, Mark's steps paused, then turned. "Mom?" he called. His voice had that careful brightness he'd started using with me the last few years, like he was speaking to someone easily startled. "In here," I answered. He came into the living room with his phone in his hand. He always has that thing on him, like a teenager. When he was 16, I took his first phone away because he stayed up too late texting. Now I'm supposed to pretend I don't see him checking emails while I'm telling him about my roses. He smiled, but his eyes slid quickly over the pile of peas, then to the corner where my walking stick leaned against the wall. "You shouldn't be on your feet so long," he said automatically, then seemed to realize I was sitting and added, doing chores. "I could have done that." "You hate shelling peas," I said. "You always have. You used to hide them in your pockets so I'd think you'd eaten them." He laughed a little. "You remember that?" "I'm old, not stupid," I said mildly. "What's wrong?" "Wrong?" He blinked too fast. "Nothing's wrong." He sat down in the chair opposite mine, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, phone still in his hand. His fingers kept tapping the edge of it. That was another new habit. Tap, tap, tap. Work had made him nervous. I studied him. His hair is more salt than pepper now. The first gray thread showed up when he was 32, after the divorce. He tried to pluck it once. I slapped his hand away and told him he'd go bald if he did that. He rolled his eyes, and the next year there were 5 more. "You look tired," I said. "You always say that." He sighed. "It's work. And, well, other things." "Your mortgage?" I asked. "The interest rate again? Or is Emma giving you a headache?" I meant his wife, my daughter-in-law. They've been together nearly 20 years now. But I still sometimes feel like I'm supposed to call her your wife instead of by her name, as if she's on loan. "It's not Emma," he said quickly. "She's been great. It's just managing everything. The house, Leo's school, the car, you." He trailed off, catching himself. There it was. The silence, again, in the gap where his next words should have been. "Me?" I repeated calmly, sliding another handful of peas from pod to bowl. "Do I need managing now?" "That's not what I meant," he said. "You know that's not what I meant." I let him squirm for a moment. I know it's unkind, but I've also learned, at my age, that if you always rescue people from their own sentences, they never actually tell you anything. "Mom," he tried again, "about the stairs." "I know. I nearly fell last month." "You've told me." "It wasn't nearly, you did fall." "I landed on my backside," I corrected. "There's plenty of padding there." "The floor came off worse than I did." "You bruised your hip." "I've had worse." He rubbed his face, dragging his hand down over his mouth. That's what he used to do when he'd been caught out as a teenager, the night he came home smelling like cigarettes, or when a teacher called to tell me he'd been fighting at school. Little things he thought were big entrances into adulthood. "Leo's coming by after school," I said, "to give him a way out." He said he wants to show me something for his history project. That made him smile, properly this time. He's been working hard on that. It's about family stories. He glanced at the magazine half hidden under my bill, and the smile faded a little. Mom, I might pop out for a bit later. I've got a call. I said. You and your calls. He hesitated, as if he wanted to say something else, then stood up and kissed the top of my head. I could smell his aftershave, the same one he's used since he was 25. I bought him his first bottle of it. Habit is funny like that, we get stuck to scents and roots and people like they're hooks in our skin. He left. The flat door clicked shut with that dull, echoing sound only old buildings make. I listened to his footsteps on the stairwell, fading, then the kettle clicked itself off. The house settled back into its usual creaks. Pipes. Fridge. The neighbor upstairs thudding about. Behind it all, that heavier quiet, like waiting weather. I looked at the magazine again. The top half of the words senior living peered out over the electricity bill like children spying from behind a fence. Well, I said to the empty room, let's hear your call, then, shall we? I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not ashamed of it either. I may be old, but I was not born yesterday. I've never liked this phone, the one Mark insisted I get. A smartphone. It's not particularly smart, it just does 100 things I don't need and makes the one thing I do need, making phone calls, more difficult. But Mark has a habit of leaving his lying around when he visits. Emma nags him about it. What if someone calls about the account? She says, what if your boss needs you? She still thinks work is the center of the world, poor thing. He'd left it on the hallway table when he went out, face down, the way people do when they're hiding something. Mine always lies face up. Let the world see if it wants to call me. I washed my hands, put the peas in the pot with a little salt, and then, heart doing a silly flutter in my chest, I went to the hallway. It took me a second to remember the code. I know I'm not supposed to know it, but he typed it in front of me 36 times. Repetition carves things into your mind, even one that misplaces names sometimes. The screen lit up. 4 digits. His thumb. His life. I shouldn't, I thought. I'm his mother, not his spy. But the thought of that magazine on my coffee table, the careful way he said you, the way Emma had been avoiding my eyes the last few weeks when the topic of my house came up, it was all pulling in one direction. On the home screen his recent apps were open, mail, banking, something with a blue logo I didn't recognize. But it was the top of his call list that made my hand tighten around the phone. Green and gray lines, name after name. At the very top, under today, Oakview residence. I pressed it before I could talk myself out of it and lifted the phone to my ear. It rang twice, then a bright, trained voice answered. Oakview residence, this is Carla speaking. How can I help you? I didn't speak. My throat had closed up around all the air I'd planned to breathe. Hello? The voice asked again. Oakview residence, how can I help you? I glanced down, the mute button on the screen glowed white. I must have brushed it when I brought the phone to my ear. That foolish, automatic action probably saved me from making an even bigger fool of myself. I hung up. My heart was hammering in my ears. Oakview residence. I knew the name, not from the magazine, from the large, glossy brochure Emma had left in her handbag 2 weeks ago. Half-zipped, the edge of it peeking out like the tongue of a secret. A smiling older man in a cardigan, sunlight on a garden path. Oakview, where your loved ones feel at home. At the time, I told myself it was for her aunt. The one with the bad hips. Or maybe research for some charity thing at Leo's school. Anything but what it obviously was. I put the phone down carefully on the table, screen side down now like a confession. For a moment I just stood there, my hand flat on the wood. Feeling the old varnish under my palm. My son had called a residence this morning. A residence for people like me. Warmth crept up my neck, into my face, the strange mix of embarrassment and anger you feel when you overhear somebody talking about you in the third person. In the kitchen the peas came to a boil and started rattling the lid of the pot, wanting attention. I turned the heat down, put the lid on properly, and then I pulled out a chair and sat, very slowly, at the table. The kitchen clock ticked on the wall. Each tick sounded louder than it had that morning. I wasn't always old. That seems like a silly sentence, but you'd be surprised how many people forget that about us. As if we were born with soft, folded skin and bad knees, emerging from the hospital with a pension book already in our hands. I was 19 once, standing barefoot in a small flat with a crying baby in my arms and a husband asleep on the sofa, exhausted from his shift at the factory. I was 30, chasing a 7-year-old Mark down the hallway, begging him to get his shoes on before school, laughing and swearing and hoping the landlord wouldn't raise the rent again. I was 45, kneeling on the floor of this very house, scrubbing marker pen off the skirting board because my son thought the wall was a good place to draw a robot. This house. That's where my mind went, sitting at that kitchen table. Not to the word residence, or to the image of pleasant nurses in soft polo shirts, but to the pattern on the tiles, the dent in the doorframe where Mark bashed it with his suitcase the day he moved out. The crack in the ceiling shaped like a question mark. I looked around. There was the teapot with the chipped spout that my mother gave me the year she died. There was the round wooden table, 3 of its chairs still good, one with a wobbly leg that we always warned guests about. The fridge hummed, decorated with a crooked selection of Leo's old drawings and one postcard from Mark's first holiday with Emma. "How can I help you?" the woman at Oakview had said. Help who? My son? Me? I remembered my own mother's face when my brother suggested, 30 years ago, that maybe she should go somewhere with more help. She'd laughed. Then she'd realized he wasn't joking. We did not survive a war and 2 governments, so you could put me in a cupboard with linoleum floors, she'd said, in that direct way she had. My brother flushed from the neck up. It's not like that, Ma. But she was right. He wanted to sell her little house and use the money for his boys' schooling. He wanted freedom from the worry. I understood it then, as a middle-aged woman. I understand it even more now. But I also remember the way my mother's shoulders slumped when she went to bed that night, as if the air had gone out of her. She stayed in her house until the end. She died on a Tuesday afternoon with the radio on and her knitting half finished on her lap. They said it was a good death, and maybe it was. But I remember, just as clearly, the week before when she squeezed my hand and said, "Promise me you won't let them put you on a shelf, Anna. The world loves to shelve old women." I had promised. Of course I had. I didn't think I would ever need to cash in that promise. We never do. The front door opened with a clatter, jerking me back to the present. "Grandma?" Leo shouted from the hall. "Where are you?" "In here," I called, forcing my voice into its normal shape. He barreled into the kitchen with his backpack slung over one shoulder, cheeks flushed from the walk, dark hair sticking up in 3 different directions. He's 14, all elbows and opinions, and he smells faintly of deodorant and school corridors. "Hi," he said, leaning over to kiss my cheek before dropping his bag on the floor. "Something smells good." "Pea soup," I said. "And bread. Nothing fancy. Fancy enough for me." He swung himself into the chair opposite, the one Mark always takes when he comes. "Can I show you my project?" "In a minute," I said automatically. "How was school?" "Fine." He rolled his eyes. "Can I show you my project?" I smiled despite the knot in my chest. "Yes, show me your project." He pulled a folder out of his bag and opened it, spreading the pages across the table. Carefully printed sheets, some typed, some in his messy handwriting, and photos. "It's for history," he said. "We have to interview someone in our family about their life and then do this kind of timeline." "Why do you say it like that?" I asked. "Like what?" "This kind of timeline," I mimicked, wrinkling my nose. He grinned. "Because half the kids are just doing something boring like, when my parents got married, and, when I was born. My friend Dina's doing her granddad. Though, he was in the Navy." "That's cool." I thought, maybe you could be my person? My person. The words hit me somewhere tender. "If you don't want to, I can." I didn't say I didn't want to, I cut in. "Sit properly. You're sliding off the chair." I paused. "What do you want to know?" He took out a list. "Okay, so there are questions like, where were you born? What was your childhood like? What major events happened in your lifetime that you remember?" He squinted. And then I added some of my own. Like, did you ever do something you regret? And did you ever almost die? "That's cheerful." "It's for history," he said, as if that explained everything. He asked the school's questions first. I told him about the street I grew up on, with its uneven pavement and the neighbor who kept pigeons on his roof. I told him about my father, who never said he loved us but cycled home every day on a flat tire because he'd given his bus money to a man who looked cold. I told him about the night the power went out across the whole town and we ate dinner by candlelight and pretended we were rich people having a fancy meal. He wrote fast, sometimes looking up at me, his eyes doing that flicker they do when he's trying to imagine something bigger than his own experience. When he got to his own questions, he hesitated. Did you ever do something you regret? Of course, I said. I regret shouting at your father the day he dropped his ice cream in the street. He was 5. It was an accident. I was tired and worried about money, and I took it out on him. That's it? He raised an eyebrow. Oh, I also regret my second to last haircut. I said. I looked like a mushroom. He snorted. You're dodging. I wasn't, not really. Most of my big regrets are things I didn't do. The job I didn't apply for because I thought I wasn't smart enough. The holiday I didn't take because I was worried about the cost. Telling my husband to go if you want to, see if I care on the night he walked out, when what I meant was, stay, you idiot. We can fix this. I'll tell you the main one when you're 30, I said. You're too young now. He made a face but didn't argue. Did you ever almost die? He asked, reading the next question. I thought of the time I slipped on the ice outside the supermarket when I was 59, my feet flying out from under me, the sky spinning. Of the red car that missed me by inches that time I crossed the road without looking properly. But the closest I've come to feeling like I was disappearing was not any of those. It was the first time last year that Mark gently took the shopping bag from my hand and said, "Careful, Mom, that's too heavy for you." I didn't say that to Leo, of course. I had pneumonia the year your father turned 10, I said. Fever, coughing, the lot. Doctors said I needed to rest. So I lay in bed and shouted instructions from the bedroom while your grandfather burned everything he tried to cook in the kitchen. Did Dad help? Leo asked. Yes, I said. He brought me water and read to me. He was very serious at 10. He used to check my temperature with his hand on my forehead. Like a doctor. Leo smiled, then his eyes flicked to the hallway. Is Dad here today? He was, I said. He just went out. He said he had a call to make. Oh, Leo said, in a tone that made me look up. What? I asked. Nothing. He fiddled with his pen. He's just been on his laptop a lot. Talking to Mum. They think I'm not listening, but I am. They're stressed. Yes, I said dryly. So are the peas. If we don't eat soon, they'll turn to mush. He helped me set the table, carrying bowls and spoons, cutting the bread in thick, uneven slices. He has his father's hands, square, capable, but he uses them differently. There's a softness in him that Mark had once and has since tucked away somewhere under duties and deadlines. We ate, talking about his teachers, his friends, the boy in his class who got suspended for vaping in the toilets. Very normal, very ordinary, very the world still turns. But all the while, at the back of my mind, the phone call sat like a stone. Oakview residence. My son was making calls about where to put me. I was sitting in the kitchen, telling his boy about my childhood, while he was out arranging my, what? My next step? My care plan? My removal? I looked at Leo's face, his easy smile, the way his eyes crinkled a little when he grinned. He was listening to me. He wanted to know my stories. To him, I wasn't a problem to be solved. I was my person for his project. My chest ached. Grandma? He said suddenly. Are you okay? I realized I'd been staring at him too long. I'm fine, I lied. Just thinking. About what? About your father, mostly, I said. And about promises. The confrontation didn't happen that day. Life doesn't work like a film, with everything neatly arranged into a single evening. Real life is pettier and slower. It took almost 2 weeks for the dam to crack. In those 2 weeks, Mark came over 3 more times. Each time he looked at my bruised hip, still yellow-green around the edges, and winced. Each time he said something about safety and long-term. Each time he mentioned that Leo's school wanted him to sign up for after-school activities, and how he and Emma were juggling too much. Each time, I didn't mention Oakview. We are very skilled, in this family, at talking around the thing in the middle of the room and pretending it's part of the furniture. On the 10th day, a Thursday, I was watering the plants on the windowsill when I heard it. Mark's voice, in the hallway. He thought he'd closed the door behind him, but he hadn't, not properly. It was open just a crack. I know, he was saying, his tone low. I know what it costs, I'm not an idiot. That's why I'm asking about payment plans. I froze, my hand hovering over the spider plant, water dripping from the spout of the little plastic can. Yes, he said. She has a house. Yes, it's paid off. No, I don't know if she'd be willing to sell. That's complicated. My grip tightened on the watering can. He sighed. I understand there's a waiting list. I just want to make sure we're on it. In case something happens. She's already fallen once in. The water overflowed from the pot and spilled onto the windowsill, trickling down to the floor. I set the can down too hard, and it made a dull thud. Hang on, Mark said on the other side of the door. I'll call you back. I walked back to the sink and placed the watering can there, my legs feeling like someone had replaced my bones with hollow sticks. He came into the kitchen a moment later, phone in his hand. Who were you talking to? I asked, before he could put on his polite smile. He blinked. No one. Work. That wasn't your work voice, I said. That was your, I'm trying to organize something I don't want to talk about voice. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I watched pride and fear fight it out behind his eyes. Finally, he said, Mom, we need to talk. Do we? I asked, though of course I knew we did. He gestured to the table. Can we sit? I'm already standing, I said, because I am petty when I'm cornered. But I moved to the chair anyway and lowered myself into it. He sat opposite. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, as if the walls had shuffled closer to here. You know I worry about you, he began. That's what you say to people when you're breaking up with them, I said. You know that, right? I worry about you, I care about you, but... He huffed out a humorless laugh. This isn't a breakup. It feels like one. Mom, he said, you fell down the stairs. I slipped, I corrected. There's a difference. You could have broken your hip. But I didn't. You might next time. There doesn't have to be a next time, I said. You can put in a stair rail. Get me those sticky strips for the steps. You can move the rug I keep tripping over, even though I like it. We've done those things, he said. It's not just the stairs. It's, you forget the kettle sometimes. The other day you left the gas on. I turned it off after a minute. What if you forget for an hour? I won't. How do you know? He demanded. I stared at him. This was new. The sharpness. The fear. Mark has always been cautious, but he's rarely spoken to me like that. His face was pale with it. He scrubbed his hand over his mouth again. Look, I'm not trying to be the bad guy here. I can't be here all the time. Emma can't. We both work. Leo has school. If something happens. So your answer is to put me away, I said. It's not putting you away. It's a residence. A place with nurses and people. Activities. They have a garden. There's a piano. You love the piano. I laughed, a small, bitter puff of air. So you have talked to them. He flinched. How do you? The door wasn't closed properly, I said. You were talking about payment plans. About my house. His shoulders sagged. The fight went out of him in one visible wave. He looked suddenly smaller, like the boy who once sat on the kitchen floor and cried because he'd broken his favorite toy. I was going to talk to you. He said. Soon. I wanted to have information first. Options. Options, I echoed. Sell my house, send me somewhere, and then what? Come visit on Sundays with flowers? Or will you get too busy for that too? That's not fair, isn't it? I asked quietly. He swallowed. His eyes were shiny. You think I want this? You think this is easy for me? I lie awake at night imagining you at the bottom of those stairs, and nobody knows for hours or days. Days? I snorted. Someone would notice when I didn't answer Leo's calls. That's not funny. Neither is you planning my disappearance behind my back. We stared at each other over the kitchen table. The clock ticked. Somewhere in the building a baby cried, just for a second, then stopped. What do you want me to do? He asked finally, his voice rough. Pretend you're still 50? You're not. You're 68. Your memory isn't what it was. You get tired. You're not invincible, Mom. I never was, I said. You just didn't notice. He looked down at his hands. They said, the woman on the phone, Carla, she said there's a waiting list. That we should get on it now, in case things decline. Decline, I repeated, like a faulty stock. He winced. I know you worry, I said more softly. I know you're scared. I am too, you know. Do you think I don't look at the stairs and imagine them as a mountain? Do you think I don't stand in the kitchen sometimes and forget why I came in here? Then why? He trailed off. Why not go somewhere where there's help? Because this is my home, I said simply. Because your father carried me over that threshold as a joke when we first moved in, and we laughed so hard he nearly dropped me. Because I painted that wall terrible peach in '94 and then painted over it again a week later. Because I sat on that sofa and held you when your wife left you the first time and you thought your life was over. Because my mother made me promise I wouldn't let myself be shelved like an old book. That's sentimental, he muttered. Yes, I said, it is. And? He looked up, meeting my eyes properly for the first time. I saw the conflict there, the tug of responsibility versus guilt, fear versus love. You're not being rational, he said. Oh, I'm being very rational, I replied. I don't want to go to a place where I don't know the smell of the carpets or the sound the pipes make at night. I don't want to share a room with someone who snores and have my meals planned on a chart. I don't want my world shrunk to a corridor and a garden path someone else locks at 8 p.m. It wouldn't be like that, he said weakly. You don't know that, I said. You've seen a brochure. He exhaled hard. So what, we do nothing. Just wait for something awful to happen? Or, came a voice from the doorway, you could actually do the thing where you talk to each other like human beings instead of throwing guilt around. We both turned. Leo stood there, backpack still on his shoulder, headphones around his neck. His face was pale, his eyes wide. I don't know how long he had been listening. Leo, Mark said sharply. This is a private conversation. Leo snorted. Not that private. You're talking loud enough for Mrs. Petrov on the second floor to hear. Don't be disrespectful, Mark snapped. Don't send Grandma away, then, Leo shot back. The room went very still. Leo, I began, this isn't. It is about me, he said, stepping into the kitchen fully and dropping his bag with a thud. You keep saying I'm too young to worry about this stuff, but I live here too. I'm the one who comes over after school. I'm the one who calls Grandma every evening. If you send her away, what, I just go visit her in some weird hotel for old people? It's not a hotel, Mark muttered. I know what it is, Leo said. Mr. Redding's grandma is in one. He says it smells like boiled cabbage and sadness. Leo, Mark warned. I'm serious, Leo insisted. He turned to me. You don't want to go, right? No, I said. Then why are you even talking about it? He demanded, swinging back to his father. Because it's not that simple. Mark said. You're a child, you don't understand. Then explain it to me, Leo said. Explain why the solution to you being stressed is to take Grandma's whole life and stuff it in a drawer. Explain why it's easier to pay strangers to look after her than to figure out a way to actually. I don't know, help. Mark opened his mouth, then closed it. I watched his throat work. I have a plan, Leo said suddenly. Oh, good, Mark said dryly. My 14-year-old has a plan. Fantastic. Shut up and listen, Leo said. Then, catching himself, sorry. Don't shut up. Just, hear me out. He looked at me as if asking permission. I nodded. At that point, I figured we had nothing to lose. Leo's plan, as it turned out, had 3 parts. He explained it that evening, over plates of reheated soup, his hands drawing diagrams in the air. Step 1, he said, we make the house safer so Dad can't keep using the "you're going to fall" argument. Step 2, we prove to everyone, including you, Grandma, that you can still do more than they think, without it being dangerous. Step 3, we make Dad feel like an absolute trash human being for even thinking about shipping you off. Language, I said automatically. Sorry, he smirked. But I mean it. We can't just say, please don't do it. That hasn't worked. We need evidence. And we need feelings. People change their minds when their brain hurts and when their heart hurts. I raised an eyebrow. And when did you become a psychologist? TikTok, he said, deadpan. I couldn't help laughing. Even Mark, grudgingly, cracked a smile. I'm not promising anything, Mark said. I'm listening. That's all. Good enough, Leo said. Okay, step 1. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was a list, crammed with his jagged handwriting. I looked up, fall prevention for seniors, he said. There's all this stuff, better lighting, grab bars, non-slip mats, raised toilet seat. It's not rocket science. We can do most of it ourselves. I'll help. We can rearrange the furniture so there's nothing to trip over. We can move your bedroom downstairs, Grandma, so you don't even have to use the stairs every day. I like my bedroom, I protested. It has the view of the tree. You can still go up there in the day, he said. But you sleep downstairs. That way if you do fall, at least it's from bed height, not from halfway down the staircase. Mark made a choking sound. That's not funny. It's a little bit funny, I said. Leo frowned. I'm serious. If we do all this and you still think it's really dangerous, fine, we can talk about other options. But at least we'll have tried something other than panicking. Mark rubbed his temples. And where do you think we're getting the money for grab bars and whatever else? Half that stuff is cheap, Leo said. There's a hardware store near school. I checked the prices. And if you stop buying those stupid energy drinks, you could pay for a whole rail in like 3 days. I need those for work, Mark muttered. You need sleep, Leo retorted. I watched them bicker, that old familiar rhythm of father and son, and felt something unclench slightly in my chest. Maybe this could work. Maybe it was naive. But naive hope is better, sometimes, than bitter resignation. Step 2, Leo went on. We prove that Grandma's not as helpless as you think. I don't think she's helpless. You talk about her like she is, Leo cut in. You say stuff like, she can't manage the house, and she forgets things. Yeah, sometimes she forgets things. So do you. Remember the time you put your keys in the fridge? That. Mark began, then gave up. We can do I don't know, a trial run, Leo said. We set up a system. Labels on things. A whiteboard for reminders. Maybe one of those pill organizers with the days on them. Grandma, you said you feel a bit lost sometimes? I nodded slowly. I do. Sometimes I walk into a room and stand there wondering what I came for. But I've been doing that since I was 30. To be honest. He smiled. Exactly. So we don't pretend you're 20, but we also don't pretend you're 98 and on life support. We figure out what you can do, and we support that, instead of throwing you into some home where everyone's in worse shape than you are and you just decline because that's what everyone expects. Mark was quiet. He was listening, really listening. In step 3? I asked. The part where you make your father feel like, what did you say, trash? Leo's expression changed. He looked suddenly older, in a way that worried me and impressed me at the same time. That's the emotional part, he said. Grandma, will you do something for me? For my project? This better not involve TikTok dances, I said. It's an interview, he said. But on video. I want to film you telling some of your stories. About when you were my age. When Dad was little. About everything, really. We can do it over a few days. I'll edit it for my history project. But we'll also have the full thing, like an archive. That sounds nice, I said slowly. But how is that part of your plan? Because, he said, looking at his father, I'm going to invite you and Mum over to watch it. And I'm going to pick the stories that show exactly how much Grandma has done for this family. How much she gave up. How she's the reason we even have this stupid house you're trying to sell. I never said I was going to sell it, Mark protested weakly. But you were thinking it. Leo said, and I get it. Really, I do. Money is tight. You're stressed. But I want you to have to sit in that living room, on that sofa, and look at your mom when she was my age and realize that you are about to ship the main character of your whole life story to a place that smells like cabbage because you can't be bothered to buy a grab bar. Leo, I said, half shocked, half delighted. You are brutal. It's for his own good, Leo said. And yours. He turned back to Mark, his voice softening. Dad, I'm not trying to make you the villain. I know you're scared. I know you think you're doing the responsible thing. But I also know you. You'll regret it. If you send Grandma away when she doesn't want to go, you will regret it every time you walk past her empty window. So let's try my way first. If it doesn't work, you can say, I told you so, for the rest of your life. Deal? Mark stared at his son. When Mark was Leo's age, he argued with me about curfews and music volume and whether or not he could get a dog. He never argued with this kind of clarity. Some of that is personality, some of it is the world. Kids grow up different now. Finally, Mark sighed. It was the sigh of a man standing at the edge of a cliff, deciding to step back instead of forwards. Fine, he said. We'll try it your way. But if I think things are getting worse, We talk, I said firmly. You do not sneak my name onto any waiting lists. You do not have hushed conversations in the hallway. You sit at this table and you tell me what you see. And we decide together. Okay, he whispered. Okay. Leo leaned back in his chair, looking relieved and oddly proud. Cool. Step 1 starts Saturday. I'm bringing my friend Finn. He knows how to use a drill. Oh, God, Mark muttered. This plan just got dangerous. ... The next few weeks were some of the strangest of my life. On Saturday, Leo and his friend arrived like a pair of overexcited repairmen, arms full of bags from the hardware store. They installed a railing along the staircase with the solemnity of surgeons. They put non-slip mats in the bathroom, ugly but effective. They rearranged my living room furniture so there was a clear path from door to sofa to kitchen. We're doing elder-friendly ergonomics, Leo announced, as if he'd invented the term. They moved my bed into the small room downstairs that I used to use for knitting and storage. I protested, then stood in the doorway that night and looked at the way the streetlight fell in a stripe across the wall, the way the radiator ticked gently. It felt new and old at once. I slept better than I had in months, even if I missed the view of the tree. Mark came over on Sundays with a toolbox, adding to their work. He installed a second handrail by the front steps. He fixed the wobble in the kitchen chair. He checked the smoke alarms, muttering to himself. It's like a reality show, I told Emma over the phone one evening. Extreme Makeover, Pensioner Edition. She laughed, but it sounded strained. He's scared, Anna, she said quietly. He doesn't always show it in good ways. But he's trying. I know, I said. I also know he called Oakview. Silence hummed down the line. He told you? She asked. I overheard, I said. And then he told me. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I told him we should talk to you first. Properly. I didn't. I don't want you to feel like we're ganging up on you. You are, I said. But at least now you're doing it where I can see you. She exhaled. Leo said he has a plan. Oh, he does, I said. Apparently I'm step 2. Then I'll stay out of the way, she said. He gets very defensive when I interfere. She was right. This was between the three of us more than anyone. Leo and I started filming the interviews the following week. He turned my living room into a makeshift studio, propping his phone on a stack of books and using the lamp with the broken shade as a key light. He sat me in my old armchair, the one with the sagging cushion, and told me to just talk. About what? I asked. About you, he said. Tell me about when you were my age. So I did. I told him about the first boy who ever tried to kiss me behind the school gym and how I pushed him away and then spent a week wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. I told him about the time my friends and I skipped class to sit by the river and got sunburned. I told him about my father's hands, always stained with engine oil, and my mother's recipe for soup. He listened with an intensity that made me feel like I was saying something important. Even when I was just describing the way the buses smelled in summer. On the third day, he asked, "What's the hardest thing you've ever done?" Giving birth, I said automatically. Then, after a moment, number. Letting Mark move out. He raised an eyebrow. Why? Because when you have a child, your whole world shrinks to their size, I said slowly. And then one day they get on a bus with a suitcase and half your kitchenware and go off to live their own life. And if you've done your job right, they don't look back too much. Did Dad look back? He asked. Every weekend, I said, smiling. For laundry. And food. Do you regret not, I don't know, having more of a life for yourself? He asked. I had a life, I said. It just wasn't the one I imagined when I was 15 and thought I'd be a journalist or an actress or a spy. You wanted to be a spy? Who didn't? He laughed, but his eyes were shiny again. He gets that from Mark. Leo edited the videos in his room at home. I don't know what magic he did with his apps and programs, but by the end of it he had a 20-minute film that made my life look like something out of a small, warm documentary. He added photos, too, old ones he'd scanned from my albums, of me holding baby Mark, of our first car, of the ugly curtains we had in the 80s. He called it Anna's story. I told him it sounded like a perfume. He rolled his eyes. We're watching it on Sunday, he said. You, me, Dad, Mum. No arguments. Bossy, I said. Runs in the family, he replied. Meanwhile, the little adjustments to the house started to work their way into my days. The grab bar by the bath meant I didn't have to brace myself and pray every time I got out. The non-slip mat in the kitchen kept me from sliding when water splashed from the sink. The whiteboard by the fridge, on which Leo neatly wrote tablets, 9 a.m., 6 p.m. with little tick boxes for each day, kept me from constantly opening the cupboard to check if I'd taken my pills. I still forgot what I'd walked into rooms for sometimes. I still misplaced my glasses at least once a day. But I also noticed I was walking a little more confidently, now that the house wasn't booby-trapped with loose rugs and badly placed coffee tables. Mark noticed, too. He'd open his mouth to say something, be careful, and then stop, because I'd already reached for the rail or flipped the light on before stepping. It wasn't a miracle. It was just adjustments. Respect, in physical form. Sunday arrived. Leo came over early to fiddle with the TV and the speakers. Emma brought a cake she pretended was just because but was clearly a peace offering. Mark carried in a bag of crisps and a guilty expression. We sat in the living room, me in my chair, Leo cross-legged on the floor, Emma on the end of the sofa, Mark in the middle like a man about to watch his own trial. Leo dimmed the lights, as much as my stubborn curtains would allow. And hit play. I expected to cringe watching myself on screen. I've never liked my recorded voice, it sounds thinner than it does in my head. But something about the way Leo had edited it made it feel gentle. There I was, 20 years younger in old photos, holding baby Mark, my hair dark and my face unlined. There I was, on the video, in the present, talking about that girl as if she were someone I'd read about in a book. Leo had cut the footage so that my stories flowed into each other. Childhood to marriage to motherhood to single motherhood to grandmotherhood. Over some parts, he'd overlaid quiet music, nothing soppy, just a simple piano tune. At one point, on the screen, the younger me was sitting on the floor with 4-year-old Mark, surrounded by Lego. Off camera, you could hear my late husband laughing. Then it cut to me now, saying quietly, I thought if I built his world stable enough, he would never be afraid of anything. The camera lingered on my face. In the corner of my eye, I saw Mark shift on the sofa. His hand went to his mouth again, that old gesture. On screen, Leo asked me, why did you stay in this house after Granddad left? Because it was ours, I said, my recorded self answering. Because every room had a story. Because leaving felt like saying none of it mattered enough to fight for. Do you ever want to leave now? The Leo on the video asked. The me on screen paused, then smiled sadly. You'll have to ask me again when I'm old, I said. Leo had filmed that bit before the Oakview conversation. Before I realized how close leaving was to becoming someone else's plan for me. I heard Emma sniff quietly. On screen, a montage of photos, me and Mark on various birthdays, blowing out candles. Mark in his horrible teenage phase, hair too long, holding a guitar he couldn't play. Then me holding baby Leo for the first time, my face lit up like someone had turned on all the lights in the world. The video ended with me saying, if I've done anything right in my life, it's been loving my son and my grandson. Even when I annoyed them. Especially then. The screen faded to black. The room was silent except for the hum of the old fridge in the kitchen. Leo cleared his throat. So, he said, that's my project. Leo, Emma said softly. It's beautiful. He shrugged, suddenly shy. Thanks. I looked at Mark. His eyes were wet. He wiped at them impatiently. Dad? Leo said. Mark stared at the blank TV for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was husky. I'm a coward, he said. Emma frowned. Mark. I am, he insisted. He turned to me. You did all that. For me. For years. And the first time things get hard, my first instinct is to outsource you. It's not that simple, I said. Fear does funny things to people. No, it really is that simple, he said. I was scared, and instead of dealing with that, I tried to put you somewhere where professionals could deal with it for me. For us. And I dressed it up as being responsible. Some people need those places, Emma said quietly. It's not evil. I know, he said. But Mom's not there yet. And I shouldn't have made plans without her. Without you, he corrected, looking at me again. I'm sorry. The thing about being a mother is that you carry your children's apologies around with you long after they've forgotten what they were sorry for. When he was 6 and broke my favorite mug, he sobbed and said, I didn't mean to, and I held him until his hiccups stopped. When he was 21 and called me drunk in the middle of the night to say he'd crashed his car but he was okay. His voice wobbly with guilt, I forgave him before he even finished the sentence. Now, at 44, he was looking at me like that boy again. The lines on his face were deeper, but the vulnerability was the same. I know you're scared, I said. So am I. Aging is a betrayal, sometimes. Of your body, of your mind, but you don't get to let your fear make choices for me. That's my job. I'm still here. I'm still me. He nodded slowly. I see that. I've been so busy imagining what could go wrong that I stopped seeing what's actually right in front of me. And what's that? I asked. He gestured around. A woman who raised me, held me together when my marriage fell apart, babysat my kid for free, cooked me 1,000 meals, and who now needs some rails and a pill organizer. Not a residence. Leo made a small triumphant noise. So, Mark said, turning to him, step 3 worked. Leo shrugged, though he couldn't hide his smugness. I told you, brain and heart, both hurt now? Like hell, Mark said. Then he laughed, a shaky sound. Good. Maybe I'll remember this next time I think about doing something stupid. Emma reached over and took his hand. We figure it out as a family, she said. Okay? We don't always do it gracefully. But we try. He squeezed her hand back. Then he looked at me. Mom, he said, I'm taking you off the waiting list. Good, I said. I didn't like the name anyway. Oakview. Sounds like a place where trees go to die. Leo snorted. I still worry, Mark added quickly. I'm still afraid something might happen when you're alone. Then spend less time on your phone and more time here, I said. Come for dinner twice a week. Not once a fortnight. Call me in the mornings instead of just at night. And accept help. Help? He repeated. You think this is just about you taking care of me, I said. But you forget that I can still take care of you. Not by carrying your shopping, no. But by listening. By reminding you that you're not alone either. That fear shrinks more than just old women's worlds. He looked at me, really looked, and I saw understanding settle in. Okay, he said again. Okay. Leo flopped backwards onto the rug with a satisfied groan. Step 4, he said, we order pizza, because I just emotionally manipulated you both and I'm starving. There is no step 4, I said. There is now, he replied. We ordered pizza. We ate in the living room, out of the box, grease on our fingers, watching some silly game show where people guessed each other's secrets. In any other house, it would have been an ordinary Sunday. In ours, it was a kind of quiet victory. Of course, things didn't magically become easy after that. Life never respects tidy endings. There were days when my knee hurt so badly I could barely make it from my chair to the kitchen, even with the rail. Days when the word I needed slipped just out of reach and I was left grasping at air, frustrated and small. On those days, I caught Mark watching me with that old worry in his eyes, his jaw tight. These are the days that make me think, he began once. Then trailed off. I know, I said. And on those days, we talk. We don't start Googling Oakview. He smiled crookedly. Deal. We talked more after that. Not just about practical things, but about feelings, an area my son has always treated like a foreign country. He admitted, one evening, that the idea of me dying alone in the house terrified him because he still carried guilt about not being there when his father left. I told him I didn't plan to give him that particular trauma. I'll do my best to die in a very inconvenient way for you, I said. Like in your car while you're driving. Mom, he groaned. Leo kept coming over after school. We made it a ritual, tea at 4, phone call to Mark at 5 to prove I was still alive, history homework at 5:30. Sometimes Leo would bring his laptop and show me edits he was making to my video, adding subtitles and little captions explaining who was who. For the archive, he said. One afternoon, he asked, do you ever get scared of, forgetting everything? Yes, I said. Not all the time, not every minute, but the fear is there. Like a hum in the background. What are you most afraid of forgetting? He asked. Your faces, I said, without hesitation. Your names. The fact that you're mine. I can live with forgetting where I put my keys. I can't bear the thought of looking at you and seeing a stranger. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached for his phone and tapped something. What are you doing? I asked. Taking a backup, he said. In case your brain's Wi-Fi goes down. I laughed, even as my throat tightened. If that happens, I said, you'll just have to remind me every day. Who you are, who I am, that I chose to stay. He nodded. Deal. The thing about moral choices is that they rarely look dramatic from the outside. No one rang a bell the day Mark deleted the email from Oakview. There was no choir when he threw the brochure in the recycling. Life just went on. But something subtle shifted in the air between us. Before, there had been a quiet assumption that I was a problem waiting to happen. Now, there was a shared understanding that I was a person navigating a difficult season, same as them. That might sound like a small difference, but it changed everything. When I stumbled, they didn't immediately say, "This is why you should be in a home." They said, "How can we make this easier?" When I forgot something, they didn't roll their eyes. They wrote it down with me. When I did something independently, figuring out the online banking with Leo's help, calling the doctor myself, they celebrated, not in a patronizing way, but with genuine relief. "I should have done this earlier," Mark said once, watching Leo help me sort my pills into the little compartments. "Done what?" I asked. "Treat you like you're part of the solution," he said. "Not like a broken appliance." "Better late than never," I replied. "You were always a slow learner." He rolled his eyes exactly the way he did when he was 13. A few months after the Oakview incident, my neighbor from 2 floors up, Mrs. Petrov, moved into a residence. Not Oakview, a different one, nearer to her daughter. She'd fallen, broken her hip, and after the surgery it became clear she couldn't manage alone anymore. Her daughter came by to say goodbye on move-out day, her arms full of boxes, her face a mixture of relief and guilt. I saw myself in her, and I saw my son. "I hope you're not judging me," she said awkwardly in the hallway. "About Mum? About the home?" "Of course not," I said. "We all do what we can, with what we have. No two stories are the same." She nodded, visibly grateful. Later, alone in my flat, I stood by the window and watched the taxi pull away with Mrs. Petrov in the back seat, a small figure framed in the glass. She waved. I waved back. There was a time, not long ago, when I might have looked at that taxi and thought, that will be me next. Now, I thought, that might be me someday. But not because someone else decided I was too difficult to love. And that, more than any rail or mat or whiteboard, made the fear quiet down a little. On warm days now, I sit by the window with the light coming in, or in the little shared garden behind the building when my knees allow, and I think about shelves. My mother was right, the world loves to put old women on shelves. In houses at the edge of town. In rooms at the end of corridors. In conversations, too, where people talk over us as if we've already gone. But what I've realized, what this whole absurd, painful episode with Oakview and waiting lists and grab bars taught me, is that sometimes we help them do it. Out of fear, out of politeness, out of a belief that we're not allowed to be inconvenient. I almost let my son shelve me because I didn't want to add to his burden. I almost agreed to quietly disappear from my own life because I was afraid of being the reason his stayed messy. Leo refused to let me. He reminded me that I am not a piece of furniture to be moved where I fit best. I am the woman who held my family's stories in her hands for decades. The one who stayed when others left. The one who can still say no, even when her voice shakes. That's the moral of this little tale, I suppose. If it needs one, speak up before they put you on a shelf. Not by screaming, not by clinging, but by sitting at the kitchen table and saying, calmly, I am still here. I still get a say. My son's fear didn't vanish when he deleted that email. My knees didn't suddenly become young. I still might end up in a residence someday, if my mind or body betrays me more than any rail or grandson can fix. But if that day comes, we'll walk into it together, eyes open, choice made, not as a quiet surrender but as a considered step. For now, though, I live here. In my house. With my dented furniture and my humming fridge and my grandson's whiteboard next to the calendar. With my son's worry softened by understanding, and my own fear held in check by the knowledge that I have not been shelved without a fight. And on Sundays, when we sit in this living room with pizza boxes and stupid game shows, I look at my son and my grandson and think, this is what it means to grow old and still belong. That, more than anything, is why I stayed.